Welcome back, everybody. It's your boy THO, and today I'm going to be talking about the fight night happening this Saturday, February 24th. Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval 2. The first fight I'm going to be talking about takes place in the flyweight division. Victor Moreno versus Felipe dos Santos. A little more about Victor Moreno. Victor has a 12-3 fighting record. Victor would start his UFC career with a win in Dana White's Contender Series. He would then lose his next fight to Carlos Hernandez, starting his UFC career 1-1. He would then string together a 2-fight win streak that would be broken to his last fight, which was a loss to Tim Elliott. Moving on to Victor's opponent, we'll be talking about Felipe dos Santos. Felipe dos Santos has a professional record of 7-1. Felipe has only fought one time in UFC, which came to a unanimous decision loss to Manuel Kopp. When I was watching this fight, I saw a lot of potential in Felipe dos Santos. Even though the fight was predominantly dictated by Manuel Kopp, Felipe dos Santos showed a lot of heart and great striking ability. Next fight I'm going to be talking about takes place in the men's lightweight division. Claudio Puelles versus Fares Ziam. A little more about Claudio. Claudio would start his professional career with a 13-3 record. Claudio would start his UFC career with a loss to Martin Bravo. After a loss to Bravo, Claudio would then go on an impressive run and win his next 5 fights. His streak would eventually come to an end on November 12, 2022, when he would fight Dan Hooker. After that fight against Hooker, Claudio has not been in the octagon since. This Saturday will be his first time back in the octagon in about 16 months. Moving over to his opponent, Fares Ziam. A little more about Fares. Fares has a 14-4 professional career. Fares would start his UFC career with a loss to Don Madge. He would then string together a 2-fight win streak before he would taste defeat again inside the octagon to Terrence McKinney. Just like before, Fares would string together another 2-fight win streak, and that is what his current streak is at entering this Saturday's fight night. The next fight I'm going to be talking about takes place in the men's flyweight division. Jesus Aguilar versus Mateus Mendonca. A little bit more about Jesus. Jesus has a professional career of 9-2. Jesus will start his UFC career with a win on Dana White's Contender Series. He would then suffer a submission loss in his next bout to Tatsuro Tara. My bad if I pronounced that incorrectly. Jesus was able to bounce back from that loss by securing an impressive TKO win over Shannon Ross. Moving on to his opponent. A little bit more about Mateus Mendonca. Mateus will start his professional career with a 10-2 record. He would also start his UFC career with a win on Dana White's Contender Series. Unfortunately, after that win, Mateus would not be able to follow up with the momentum of winning by dropping his next 2 fights to David Basharat and Nate Maines. Mateus desperately needs to win this Saturday to avoid losing 3 in a row. The next fight I'm going to be talking about takes place in the bantamweight division. Christian Kiana versus Raoni Barcelos. A little bit more about Christian. Christian has a 18-4 professional record. Christian will start his UFC career with a win on Dana White's Contender Series. Christian would follow that performance up with a TKO win over Khalid Taha. Christian would finally taste his first defeat inside the octagon with this submission loss to Kayon Ho Kang. Moving over to his opponent, Raoni Barcelos. Raoni has a professional record of 17-5. Raoni will start his UFC career with a TKO win over Kurt Hollenbach. Raoni would then put together 4-fight consecutive win streak, giving him a 5-fight win streak to start his UFC career. Raoni will eventually suffer his first loss inside the octagon to Tamir Valiev. After that, Raoni would then go 1-3 in his last 4 UFC fights. Moving on to the main card. The first fight we'll be talking about takes place in the lightweight division. Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. A little bit more about Manuel. Manuel has a 14-2 professional record. Manuel will start his UFC career off with the win on Dana White's Contender Series. He will then win his next 2 bouts in the octagon, which are all by way of KO/TKO. Manuel Torres has not suffered defeat yet inside the octagon. A little more about his opponent, Chris Duncan. Chris has a professional record of 11-1. Chris Duncan will start his UFC career on the Dana White Contender Series with the win. After that, Chris will follow that win up with 2 wins consecutively inside the UFC. Chris has also not tasted defeat yet inside the octagon. This fight, ladies and gentlemen, has the makings of a Fight of the Night contender. The next fight I'll be talking about today takes place in the women's strawweight division. Yasmin Uruguay versus Sam Hughes. Yasmin Uruguay has a 10-1 professional record. Yasmin would start her UFC career with a win. She would follow that win with an impressive performance with a KO/TKO victory over Estela Nunes. In Yasmin's latest bout, she would suffer her first loss inside the octagon with a KO/TKO loss to Denise Gomes. Let's see if she could bounce back this Saturday. A little more about her opponent, Sam Hughes. Sam has a 8-5 professional record. Sam Hughes will not have the start she would have liked to start her UFC career, dropping her first 3 fights. Sam will finally get things on track and win her next 3 out of 4 fights inside the octagon. The next fight I'm going to be talking about takes place in the men's bantamweight division. Raul Rojas Jr. versus Ricky Torcios. I believe I pronounced that. A little bit about Raul. Raul has an 8-1 professional record. Raul will start his UFC career with a win on Dana White's Contender Series. He would then follow up that performance with an impressive submission win over Jay Perrion in his next UFC appearance. Raul will suffer his first loss in his professional career to Christian Rodriguez. Raul will be able to bounce back from that loss with an impressive KO/TKO win over Terrence Mitchell. A little bit more about his opponent, Ricky Torcios. Ricky has a 13-3 professional record. Ricky Torcios would not have the start to his career that he would have liked with the unanimous decision loss to Boston Simon on Dana White's Contender Series. Because of that loss, Ricky would get cut from the UFC. Ricky will get reinstated back into the UFC via The Ultimate Fighter, which will land him a contract. With that contract and his return to the UFC, Ricky will go 2-1 in his last 3 fights. The next fight we'll be talking about takes place in the men's lightweight division. Daniel Zellhuber versus Francisco Prado. A little bit more about Daniel. Daniel has a 14-1 professional record. Daniel will start his UFC career with a win on Dana White's Contender Series. In Daniel's next fight, he will suffer his first loss in his professional career to Trey Ogden. Daniel will follow this loss up with 2 wins in his next fight inside the octagon. Moving over to his opponent, Francisco Prado. Francisco has a 12-1 professional record. Francisco will start his UFC career not to the start that he would have liked, but with the loss to Jamie Malarkey. Francisco will bounce back from that loss with an impressive KO/TKO victory over Ottoman Aziatar in his next fight. Moving on to the co-headliner of the night, Yair Rodriguez versus Brian Ortega. A little bit more about Yair. Yair has a 16-4 professional record. Yair Rodriguez would have a phenomenal start to his UFC career, winning his first 6 fights. Yair will finally suffer his first lost via TKO stoppage to Frankie Edgar. After this loss, Yari will follow this loss with a crazy KO knockout of Korean Zombie. After that fight versus Korean Zombie, Yari would then go 3-2 in his last 5 fights, with the last fight coming to a TKO loss to Alexander Volkanovski. Moving over to his opponent, Brian Ortega. Ortega has a 15-3 professional record. Brian Ortega will also have a phenomenal start to his UFC career, starting his first 6 fights, 6 wins. Ortega would then finally taste defeat for the first time inside the octagon with a doctor stoppage loss to Max Holloway. Brian Ortega would then get back on the winning column with a unanimous decision win over Korean Zombie. Ortega would then gain a title fight against then the UFC champ Alexander Volkanovski. He will come up short in that fight and lose to Volkanovski. Ortega has fought Rodriguez once before, lost to him, so the two gentlemen will be running it back this Saturday. Moving on to the final fight I'm going to be talking about today in the main event in the flyweight division, Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. A little bit more about Brandon Moreno. Moreno has a 21-7-2 professional record. Moreno would have a fantastic start to his UFC career with a 3-0 start. Moreno will finally taste defeat for the first time inside the octagon with a unanimous decision loss to Sergio Pettis. He would then lose again in his next bout to Alexander Pantoja, which will lead him to get cut by the UFC. The UFC will ultimately bring Moreno back, and after becoming reinstated inside the UFC, Moreno will not lose again to a title fight against Deiveson Figueiredo, which he actually did not lose, but will actually go to a draw. He would then gain the title from Deiveson Figueiredo in the very next fight, ultimately losing it to Figueiredo again in their third fight together. Moreno would then gain the interim title fight after he defeated Kai Kara-France. They get the rematch against Deiveson Figueiredo for the fourth title fight, which he would gain the belt back. In Moreno's final fight up to date, he will lose the belt to Alexander Pantoja, who is the current champ. The last fight I'm going to be talking about today is Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval has a 15-7 professional record. Royval will have a good start to his UFC career, winning his first 2 fights. Brandon Royval will finally suffer his first defeat inside the octagon to his current opponent, Brandon Moreno. Royval will lose that fight to Moreno, ultimately by dislocating his shoulder. Brandon Royval would then lose a consecutive fight to the current champion, Alexander Pantoja, by way of submission. Royval would then string together a series of wins, winning his next 3 fights. Royval will suffer another loss to the current champ, to Alexander Pantoja. That's it for me, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this fight this Saturday. See you guys again.